Hi everyone, thanks for listening. My name is Tsang. I'm currently a law student at Queen's University, and I'm also doing an internship right now at Ravenscroft Schmierer. And with me today, I have David Ravenscroft himself. Glad that he has made time to be with us to kind of share his knowledge and his understanding of the law. Today's focus will be largely on his notary practice, which we'd be very glad to learn more about. How are you today, David?
I'm fine, and it's nice to be with you, Isaac. So my notary practice. Well, I've been a notary since 1988, some 12 years after I became a solicitor. And it's always been something of a sideline, although since I became a consultant over 3 years ago, it's been really pretty well the only thing I do.
So would you be able to speak a little bit on what motivated you to become a notary public, and what motivated you perhaps to make it a large portion of your practice?
At first, I had no intention that it should be a large part of my practice. I just thought it would be another arrow in my quiver, and it would add to the variety of work that I could do. I was then doing mainly litigation, and I liked the idea of doing non-contentious work. It's only become really an important part of my practice, in fact the only part of my practice, 3 years ago in 2021, when I retired from the partnership and decided just to do notary work, and I also thought I might branch out into mediation work.
I see. How has that change been? How's the adjustment been?
It has reduced the stress, and I enjoy the notarial practice, but it isn't that exciting. Notary work really requires attention to detail and careful studying of documents, working out what you want to say about it. It can be a bit repetitive, but on the whole I've enjoyed it. You do find yourself meeting people, so usually a different person comes into the office every day, and that's always nice. But it is very different to contentious work.
Fair enough. It definitely does sound like it's fairly well-rounded practice on its own. So, in these last 3 years, and in the time that you've been a notary public, have you encountered perhaps a situation where it's challenging or unique, and how have you been able to handle it?
In 90% of the cases, or maybe even 95% of the cases, it's pretty straightforward. Someone wants to open a bank account and they need to verify their passports or their proofs of address. And that is straightforward. They come in with the original documents and identify themselves. And you notarize copies as true copies. Sometimes somebody comes in and says, "Would you please notarize this document?" And they don't really know what they want. Someone has told them to get it notarized, and they don't appreciate what it might involve. They don't know if they're witnessing a signature, or if it's just a true copy, or if it's something else. They just want a chop on the document and a signature on the document. I sometimes wonder if the people to whom notarized documents are presented actually examine them very carefully. I think they may just check if there are chops there, if there's a signature, and they don't pay much attention to what you're actually saying. Complications arise if you have doubts about the transaction or the document. Sometimes, or occasionally, people want you to notarize a document that relates to a transaction involving millions of dollars. And you've got to be very satisfied that this is a genuine transaction, and very often it isn't. Sometimes you're not entirely sure if it is a genuine document. That doesn't occur if it's a birth certificate or a passport. That's usually pretty clear. But if, for example, it's a certificate relating to a university, and you haven't dealt with that university before, so normally you would then have to contact the university and say, did you issue this document to this particular person at this particular time? And usually they're happy to help and they can confirm. Occasionally, it's a document issued by a school which no longer exists.
That's very unique.
And that might be an insurmountable problem. You can't even confirm if the school really did exist. And so there may be occasions when someone does present a genuine document, but for various reasons you're just not able to help them.
I guess that's got me curious now. In those sort of situations, what would you do? Do you take sort of a risk-based approach? Look at the document itself? Does it maybe match the form that maybe the closed down institution provided in the past? How would you approach these scenarios?
I think the first thing you have to bear in mind is that people are going to rely on you. So you can't take much for granted. And you've got to be really satisfied, completely sure that it is a genuine document. One may be able to, or may be willing to go the extra mile to look at third-party verification. But if they can't prove, in that example, the school existed, the document was issued, then you can't do it. But it may be that someone, the person who signed the certificate, is still around, and they are able to verify that the school did exist and they did sign it. So sometimes in those situations, you can help them.
I see. That's quite creative. Just because the school's not there, maybe the person who signed it, you piece together the pieces and kind of put together a full picture of the puzzle.
Exactly, yeah.
That's a little bit of problem solving for you, yeah. So, amidst of all this, how do you become a notary public in Hong Kong?
Okay, that is something that has changed a lot. In 1988, Hong Kong was still a British colony, and believe it or not, you were appointed by the Archbishop of Canterbury.
Wow.
And I've got a very old-looking parchment containing that appointment. Practically, what you had to do is you had to petition to be appointed and get lots of lawyers to sign your petition. So it was a rather time-consuming exercise, but it didn't require intellectual effort. Nowadays, there is an exam, and I'm told it's a very difficult exam. Only a fairly small proportion pass. In my day, apart from making the application, you had to have had 10 years practice.
10 years practice.
You may still have to have 10 years practice, but you also have to be able to pass the exam. And of course, it's not like, when you do your university degree or your qualification exams, when you are studying full time. You're still doing your normal work during the day, which may be quite hard and may be quite stressful. And then when you've done all that, you've got to come home in the evening, deal with the children, if you have any, and study for this rather difficult exam. So I do feel rather sorry for the people who are qualifying recently. But it's so much more difficult than it was for me.
So, I'll assume that you think that it's more difficult nowadays to become a notary public than it was in the past, then.
I'm sure it is. And I don't even know if I would take the exam.
Fair enough. So, speaking of requirements to become a notary public, how different are notary publics in Hong Kong compared to, I guess, other jurisdictions?
It varies a lot. I do know that in continental Europe, notaries play a much bigger part in the legal profession and are in a way more important. And for many types of transactions, you need a notary, perhaps on the buying or selling property, getting married, things like that. On the other hand, I believe that in the United States, where the requirements for being a notary vary from state to state, but I understand that on the whole, they are much less onerous than in Hong Kong.
So I think that a lot of people who are going to law school may expect to work on big M&A deals. be trial lawyers, do big cases, and notary work can be pretty different from what people might expect. What would you have to say to lawyers who are maybe hesitant to add this tool into their toolbox?
It is certainly very different to the work of a trial lawyer or M&A lawyer or a transactional lawyer. There are very few full-time notaries in Hong Kong. It isn't glamorous. You're not like a gladiator fighting for justice, but it is still very important. And notaries help the world go around. Because of the notarial profession, if you have a document that you've executed in one country, by getting it notarized, you don't have to prove it in other jurisdictions. And so it is an important part of the legal profession, even if not a glamorous part.
Yeah, understandable. Even in sort of the short time that I've been here, I definitely get the feeling that we've, through notary, been able to facilitate the happening of a lot of different types of transactions that may have been a lot more difficult without the notarial work done. So sort of on the topic of sort of facilitating transactions and facilitating making things happen with notarial work, do you think the requirements of the Notarial Act should be relaxed? So for instance, maybe allowing signature over video, or including other, I guess, technological tools to make the notarial process more accessible?
Well, I believe that the Society of Notaries may introduce an e-signature. I think that's already been done in the United Kingdom, and I think they're going to do it in Singapore, and probably Hong Kong will follow suit. But apart from that, I don't. In particular, I'm not very keen on witnessing signatures over video. The reason is because nowadays there's so much impersonation you can do. You've got to be completely satisfied with a signature because people rely on notaries. There was in fact recently a case where somebody, it wasn't relating to notaries, but somebody managed to convince someone, a third party, during a video call, that they were in fact a different person who had authority to tell them to do something. And as a result of that, money was transferred and lost. That's going to become easier over time with AI impersonation. So I think that the face-to-face verification is even more important than it was.
Yeah, I can't help but agree. You often see online nowadays lots of different AI-generated videos of politicians and famous people, and very, very real ones. There's really nothing stopping them from impersonating authorized representatives at all. So, yeah, I can't help but agree. And I think that brings our time to a close today.
Well, I thank you for having me. I've enjoyed it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for making time in your busy day, and hope that we'll have another chance to chat. Thank you.
Good.